It's Bill Kosick from Bottoms Up Boat Repair. Again, his booth is right next door if you do want to have some follow-up questions with him afterwards. Let's take fiberglass repair. So now I've actually done some damage. I've got a problem. I need to fix it. I'm going to break it up into 3 separate buckets here. The first one is maybe just a small rub, right? Maybe it's a little strike of dock rash or something like that. And then maybe I've got a small hole. You know, maybe I was installing a piece of electronics or something like that. And then we'll step up into the larger holes where maybe I need to have something on both the backside and the front side, or, well, you tell me. So let's start there at that simple fiberglass repair. I've gotten a nice piece of rub in there. I need to fix that up. And maybe
a simple fiberglass repair is just that. It's a dock rash, maybe a slide that you hit a pier and it just looks, you can't stand it.
You got a scuff in it.
You can't stand it. Some simple 2000 grit sandpaper, start real fine, make sure that you're not hurting the surface. And if you need to, maybe go to a coarser grit to get that scratch out or that imperfection. And then you wind up buffing it with a compound and a polish. And that's pretty much a minor scratch repair. If you have a chip or some dock rash, a hole that maybe, again, so many people come to me, I've put 2 screws through my boat installing an amplifier. Well, they are 2 small holes, so you can use a product like this. It's a gel coat paste that's available from Spectrum Color. They have colors dating back to 1982, so they can match a whole array of different boats. And it's a good product, just like the sheetrock.
We've talked about some dock rash. Let's go up to maybe a smaller, a larger size hole. Not quite the large, gaping holes, but if I've got, maybe it's not just a screw hole, but maybe a broom handle went through something.
Well, what I brought here today is my boat. My boat is 2 2x4s. So, say you do get a hole through the side of the boat. West System sells a great product that some fiberglass resins, if you've used them before, they really have a bad odor that you have to wear a respirator for. But
right.
These epoxies that West System makes, it's great because there's no odor, as you see when I'm about to demonstrate this. It's very user friendly. And as long as you're reading the instructions on the back, wear some gloves, wear some eyeglasses and protection glasses, you'll be fine.
As we start going into this, walk me through some of the pieces that you have set up. These are some of the tools that I want to make sure that I have ready, that I prep my area correctly. I've got all the pieces in place, so when I go to work, I know I can get it done.
You'll use, again, some 3M sandpaper and rough the area up. Usually a grinder. You're going to want to clean the contaminants off of it. Make sure that you see some good fiberglass, not just the coloring over it.
Sure.
And a normal chip brush. These are very inexpensive, found at a home store. Some mixing cups. It doesn't have to be so much a plastic cup, but it can't be styrofoam. You can possibly use, maybe something Tupperware from home. It doesn't have to be
yogurt container.
Yeah, a special container, And these spreaders, you can use a wood spreader. You can use a piece of cardboard. And as you see me do this, you'll see me work the resin into the material, and anything that really is going to be thrown away. Because when you use with epoxies and fiberglass resins, you can spend a lot of time cleaning things, but sometimes the value of the part that you're going to throw away is beyond even the thinner that you use to clean it.
Sure. And I see you even have a piece of construction paper laid down underneath, so I'm protecting some of the other area around as well.
I always like to use paper. If I use plastic, the parts that I'm trying to work with will tend to slide around in the resin, and if your table's angled, all of a sudden you walk away for a minute, the part slides down this way and everything's all messed up. So I always like to use paper because it holds the material there as you're working with it. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some gloves on here.
That sounds great. And kind of talk me through what you're planning to do here. We got to fix the side of the boat. We're fixing a hole. What are our steps?
Well, protection.
Always.
Always. And through this process, when I wear gloves, you'll see that the gloves actually turn colors, and that's something you don't want to have happen to your hands. And we're using a real user-friendly epoxy. There's nastier chemicals out there that sometimes you do need to use.
If we get up to the industrial level.
If you get into a really large level like we do at the shop, but that's not something for the homeowner. You're always going to want to use a real nice, safe product. There's others out there. West System sells a great product, but Norton makes a good product.
Sure.
You can find that at Ace Hardware.
And how much am I paying for this system here?
About $30, $25, $30 for the resin and the hardener. Comes with a pump kit. That way, each time you want to use the product, it's sealed. And everybody always worries about, well, how much do I put in? How much hardener do I put in?
What's the ratio?
Well, the ratio is 5 to 1, but it's so easy with a pump because push it down, compress it all the way, it refills itself, and I know I have one pump of material.
All right.
Same thing on the hardener. You're going to want to take the hardener, put one pump in, and for
that's
this,
it.
and that's it. For this particular case, though, we'll grab 2, and if you can see the material, I mean, it's in there, but it's not ready. So
right.
You want to mix it thoroughly. You're not just going to want to throw a brush in there and start your process. I always count to 100.
Is there a reason you're not using the brush to mix the material? Is there a reason you're using a different item?
Told me that before you cut the piece out, and then would you put resin on the backside before you put it down? And obviously I'm going to fiberglass the top, but before you even put that plywood down, would you resin the bottom side?
What I do at my shop is I'll take you cut your rotted piece out. You can see you have your panel. I'll duplicate it perfectly, and then I'll resin coat it and leave it sit overnight. That way I know the whole part that I'm working with is encapsulated in resin.
Just resin, no cloth.
No cloth. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a complete floor system, then you could possibly need to wet the whole thing down, come back, and then bond the whole area. But say this is just a storage lid, you would just need to seal it off completely, carpet it, drill holes in it for your hinges, things like that, and you're good to go.
All right, let's start applying some product.
Okay, so our material's ready. Obviously, it's all nice and mixed up correctly. And what I like to do is take the epoxy and wet out the board. Even if I have applied some material previously, I like to come back and make sure everything's nice and wet. And you can see, let's just grab one of those manuals. So we're going to go ahead and set this to the side so that when we wet this out, we don't contaminate anything, and we know that the one piece that we're working with is the only piece we're worried about at that time.
And you're just applying the product directly to the fiberglass panel there?
Yeah, you just dip it in and work it around. You're not going to want to get too much excess on there. If you're going to repeat the process, the excess can be soaked up by the next piece of cloth. And as you can see, just by me working this, I'll lift it up and show you, it almost becomes transparent because the resin soaks into the cloth compared to when we started. So you don't want it dripping, you don't want a whole bunch of excess, but you do want it thoroughly soaked.
If there was excess there, how would we get rid of it? How would we get it out of there?
Well, what we'll do is we'll apply the first piece, make sure that it conforms, tuck it all in there. And the next piece will actually soak up my excess. That way we're not wasting any of the material that, you know, if you spent $70, $80 on something like this, we're not going to want to waste any material. So we'll go ahead and soak this, and keeping in mind, we're after this being really strong. So you're not just going to lay all the fiberglass on in one direction. You're going to want to rotate the angles of the cloth, because in the cloth, the strands run perpendicular to each other. So what we want to do is we want to rotate it at a 45-degree angle. As you can see, I'll set it down on an angle, and that gives you a crisscross of the threads. It makes it so much stronger.
I see.
Tuck that piece down. And on this last piece, what I'll do is I'll actually make sure that I'm not wasting material. Pat that down, suck up some of the epoxy out of the paper if it's soaked through. I mean, I have a workbench here from my shop, so you're always going to want to make sure that anything you're working on is maybe covered with plastic on top of paper. It all depends on how you want to work it.
Sure.
But I'll apply the last of my resin, and 2 pumps of each product seem to be enough. And I'll actually take the spreader on the last batch and work all the resin out of the cloth. So it's a perfect lamination, and you can see how much excess just comes out of the cloth, and you're not going to want it to what they call resin rich. Too much resin makes the part brittle, and it won't make it strong. It just makes it so it can possibly relief off of itself. It'll actually pull away from the boat when you're trying to repair it. So on this third piece, I'm going to turn it the other way at a 45-degree angle to the original part, tuck it down with the brush, and you can see it all becomes transparent and there's no air bubbles. When you lay this up, if you just leave it down like that and leave it all wadded up, I mean, you could possibly cut yourself when that hardens. So
Sure.
you tuck it all down, make sure that everything's all painted down real nice and laminated down really nice, and the project turns out good.
And we're just using our paintbrush there to spread out all those air bubbles.
Yeah, you spread them all out, and again, that last step, when you get that last layer on, to get all the excess resin out, you'll use a squeegee, or a spreader, or a fiberglass roller, depending on the material you're using.
And Bill, we have a question right here in the back.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you ever use an air roller.
Yep, in this particular application, because it's epoxy, we don't use them, but this is what this gentleman's talking about, is an air roller. So if you're working with a different resin, one of those ones that has a lot of odor, you'll actually drag this down the repair, similar to me dragging this spreader right over the repair. And what that does is it removes all the air and it removes all the excess resin, such as that, right out of it. So again, it's not resin rich, really strong.
Again, we're talking to Bill Kosick from Bottoms Up Boat Repair. If you have questions, just raise your hand. I'll get over to you with a microphone. We can get that question over to Bill. Let's talk a little bit about drying time and setup time here on the fiberglass that we've just put on our boat. How long do we need to get that to set? How long do we need to give it?
West System spot life is about 40 minutes. After 40 minutes, it'll start to gel up a little bit and get harder to work with. It'll cure in about 8 hours. Some of the vinyl esters or polyesters that the boats are made with here, they'll take about an hour, and it's a lot more volatile chemical. I'd always like to see somebody use an epoxy like this West System or a different brand compared to a polyester.
So if I was planning to take the boat out maybe on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, get the work done on Thursday, so I know I've got plenty of time for it to dry and set, cure, before I get out on the water.
For sure. A full cure time on any product that you're going to use in a marine application is always 24 hours. Some just set up a lot faster as you're using them. You'll get in trouble with a polyester resin compared to this. This is so much easier. So if I do make a mistake, you know, if something happens, I have the time to come back and be able to fix what I've done.
Gotcha. Let's talk about shelf life of some of these products. We've got a variety of chemicals and other products out in front of us. Let's start over with the Spectrum. Once I get into that package, how long do I need to use it before it starts going bad on that gel coat fix stuff?
Spectrum Color makes a pretty good product, but any gel coat out there, you're definitely going to want to not open it until you're ready to use it, and then once oxygen hits it, you got about 30 or 60 days until it's not really going to work right. Some of the other products, compounds and waxes, they last a year or two, again, depending on the particular product. And the epoxies last about a year, as long as you keep them in a cool environment.
And, you know, this fiberglass, obviously, I'm going to save myself some money if I'm buying that in bulk. What precautions do I need to take to make sure that it's going to be malleable, it's going to be easy for me to use long term?
Always keep it in a cool environment, and if you're not going to use it for an extended period of time, you would take these pumps out, clean them with a provided cleaner for each product, and you're going to want to rotate it. Even though you're not using it, even though it's stored, you're always going to want to go give it a shake, rotate it, make sure nothing's settled to the bottom, and everything's ready for the next application.
All right. So any other questions from the audience we can take right now? Again, we're talking to Bill Kosick from Bottoms Up Boat Repair. Yeah, right down in front.
Which mesh do you use based on, like, say, a floor, or you see you have that kind of like the fibers versus the matting in the back there? One would be used for flooring, one would be used for the side panel, or which one would you use for which?
All of the boats here, well, most of the boats here, are made with this product called chopped strand mat. And it comes in different thicknesses. These two products are mainly used for a polyester or a vinyl ester repair, something that's a little more serious, say a large hole. When I'm using an epoxy, because you have to drag that thicker material through the fabric, this would actually disassemble itself, and there's bonding agents in this to hold all those hairs together that this material doesn't break down. So I just have these here for an example on a larger repair. That's the type of cloth that you would need. But again, when you go to their website or anyone's website, they'll recommend a cloth that works best with their product, and it makes it easier to follow those instructions.